It is 3 o'clock out on the West Coast in Los Angeles, California, and our coverage continues here on NewsNation as we are now about to enter the 53rd consecutive hour of the devastation in Southern California. At this moment, more than 29,000 acres burned, more than 1,000 structures destroyed. At least 5 people have died. Officials warning that number is expected to rise. The Palisades fire alone, larger than Manhattan. In Pacific Palisades, Altadena, and communities all across Southern California, a question tonight of what life will look like next.
Maybe found a picture or something, but everything seems to be gone.
I wanted to document the damage and contact my insurance company as soon as I could, and just begin the process of everything. Because, I have a dirt lot and a chimney.
Questions now starting to mount about why the heroic and brave fire crews are fighting a fight they simply could not win.
What we're trying to do is utilize our tools, taking water from pools, using dirt, whatever, our boots, just doing as much as we can. We did try our best, but we got our butts kicked.
The Los Angeles mayor, Karen Bass, under immense scrutiny this morning, defending the decision for budget cuts to the Los Angeles Fire Department.
There were no reductions that were made that would have impacted the situation that we were dealing with over the last couple of days.
Hello, good evening. Thanks for being with us here on NewsNation. I'm Blake Berman as our coverage continues out in California. Later here, though, on the Hill, we will take you inside the National Cathedral as the 5 living presidents, feet within each other, gather to celebrate the life of Jimmy Carter and that moment that was shared between Barack Obama and Donald Trump. But first, we stay in Southern California as our coverage continues. Our Brian Enton live for us once again this evening. Brian?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking here. We're in Altadena, and they're just now today coming back to their homes, the people who lived here, and seeing that pretty much everything is gone, Blake. And I mean everything. You hear that term that they say burn to the ground. I mean, that's what it's like out here, and it's block after block after block. And there's nothing left, maybe a washer and dryer. All the chimneys are still here, but beyond that, there's nothing left. I want to walk across the street with you here and show you the challenging thing for the residents here, Blake, is there's no cell phone service at all in any of these areas, which is kind of crazy considering it's LA. The only way we're able to get on TV, we put the Starlink on top of our car and we can get a signal. But beyond that, it's very, very difficult. I just talked to the couple who lived in this house. They just showed up, realized the house was totally gone. The gas is still burning in the front. They're actually, if you look on the street over here, you can see they're meeting with some other neighbors now. Everybody's just sort of coming out and talking and figuring out what's going to be next. But it's a tough question when you've got an entire city here that is, I would say, on every block, 80% of the houses look like this one, Blake. They're just totally leveled at this point.
Brian, as you go from home to home or street to street or community to community, when we were speaking with you yesterday and in the recent days, there were massive fire scenes behind you. Tonight, it's at least where you are, seemingly different. What have you noticed that has changed, if at all?
So it definitely seems like things have turned a corner in terms of the fire threat on the actual homes. I mean, last night, there were still a lot of houses on fire. The fires were still spreading from house to house. It was crazy. Today, it seems like that settled down. It's clearer. There's still a lot of smoke, but it's definitely clearer. So that part is better. But, I mean, you've got now people coming out and realizing now that they can get back to the neighborhoods that everything's gone. The other issue, Blake, which is really shocking, is that there's still no water in these areas. I mean, here, they come back out when the fires spark up again in some of these houses. We saw just a couple of hours ago, the firefighters, they're trying so hard, they go to these hydrants and there's no water. So they start asking people, do you know where a pool is? Do you know where a pool is? They figure out where people have swimming pools, and that's where they're getting the water.
that's still happening, that they're on foot there and trying to figure out where to get water?
Yeah, it just happened a couple hours ago. We saw it happen. And they go into people's backyards and they use the swimming pools. There's something with the pumps, that there's no power here. That's what we're hearing. And that's actually what President Biden said earlier, which I think is the actual issue here. The power's out, the pumps aren't working. People are frustrated in their government here. I mean, the fact that there's still no water gets people really, really mad.
Brian, you and your photographer, Luis Abad, have covered probably more hurricanes than you can remember. This is on the other side of the country in a much different scene. I wonder, Brian, what has stuck with you among the many conversations that you've had there in the Los Angeles area over the last couple days or so? It's the one that stood with you.
I think what's stuck with me is, I mean, you keep hearing apocalypse and it's like a movie, and I mean, it really is. I guess I just didn't realize that these homes could burn totally to the ground, that there would be absolutely nothing left, and that it would be so widespread. I mean, you've covered disasters, Blake, where the media all sort of, ends up on one street because that's the area where the damage is the worst. I mean, there's no media around here. The media is spread out because this goes on and on and on and on. And even a lot of these neighborhoods, people have money, they've got insurance. But I was just talking to a couple and I said, well, will your insurance pay for a rental house? And they said, well, they've already saturated the rental market. I mean, we don't know where we're going to go. You can only stay at a friend's house for so long.
Right. Our Brian Enton live for us in the town of Altadena there, just north of Pasadena in Los Angeles for us tonight. Brian, thank you. Joining me now is Joe Jacobson. He's a resident of the Pacific Palisades, one of the nearly 100,000 people who have evacuated their homes. Joe, I'm told you're about 150 miles east. You just heard our Brian Enton there talk about how hard it was to try to find somewhere to go. What's your story?
Well, thank you for having me. Really do appreciate it. And you're absolutely right. I am actually at a conference center about 150 miles east because the Airbnb I had to just get the heck out of LA County due to all the fires. But this Airbnb I got, the power just went out. So now I'm stuck trying to find another place. I might go to Phoenix. I might go down to San Diego. I got family in both places. So in all honesty, I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
You live in the Pacific Palisades, and I'm told, at least as of a few hours ago, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, your house is still standing. Is that the case? And if so, how so?
It is still standing. I'd say the fires are about 3 to 4 minutes away. There's a big cannon at the bottom, so that cannon hasn't been hit. There's an app that I follow that gives you real-time notifications, and fortunately, we haven't been hit. But I'm one of the lucky ones, as you've alluded to earlier, and everybody's been talking about. There's just so much destruction, so we're really trying to think about everybody and what we can do to be helpful when it's safe.
Is there anything you can do to be helpful?
Communicate. There are a bunch of group chats that I'm part of where we're just trying to let people know what to do. Whether it's sports or, religion or whatever groups you're part of. There are a bunch of group chats that I'm involved in, and really communicating with folks can be effective. That's how I found out to evacuate in the first place, because one of my friends in the group chat let me know where to go.
Huh. I wonder, Joe, as it is remarkable that your house in Pacific Palisades is still standing, if you've fully been able to comprehend, realize what has happened and what comes next for you and your friends and your family.
Yeah, it's hard to fathom 100%. We're just in survival mode right now. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment, and fortunately everybody in the building is fine, but 3 to 4 minutes away is just completely destroyed. So we're crossing our fingers and certainly hoping that our building stays safe, but we're the lucky ones and so many have not, and we're thinking about them, and we're going to help rebuild, of course.
Joe Jacobson, thank you for being with us here on News Nation as our coverage continues. Wishing you all the best to you, your neighbors there in and around Pacific Palisades. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Joining me now, Christopher Thomas. He is a public information officer with the Los Angeles County Fire Department. Christopher, thanks for being with us.
Please don't. Are you still there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, very good.
You got it.
I apologize. Our connection here at the base camp is bad.
All good. If you can hear me, Christopher, it strikes me that when I listen to Brian Enton, and I don't know if you heard his reporting on the ground there from Altadena, about still the struggle to get water and the struggle that the firefighters are having to get water. What is that struggle right now, and when does it ease up potentially?
Well, right now with the water up in the Palisades, and I'm working on that fire and I'm concentrating on the Palisades fire, we have had some issues with it. Remember that this was laid down years and years ago for residents, for drinking water, for just normal living, and to be overwhelmed by this fire and the amount of water that we need to do this is very overwhelming. And on top of that, the wind has been so bad, we haven't always had the opportunity to use helicopters or aircraft because the wind is so bad. And that hampers it too. So we try and put more water on from hoses and hydrants, and the older systems just weren't designed for the kind of thing we've seen. We're in a new kind of new territory here where we need this kind of water because we built so many homes in the area.
What is the biggest challenge before you right now, as you see it, or as you know it?
Right now, what is the biggest concern is the red flag warning. We just had a new start in Bell Canyon, and they are throwing all the extra resources we have onto it. We've had some crews that have worked for 48 hours straight, and they're going up there trying to save homes, trying to get ahead of all of this stuff. And I know we have people that want to get back to their homes, and they want to try and see what's going on with their homes, and our heart goes out to them. But please remember, this started this afternoon. If people went back into their homes, they could be caught right away. It's not safe, not doing it because we want to control this. We're worried about people's lives.
Do you believe that the federal government has given you everything that you need? We've heard a lot out of Washington today about the help that's headed your way, but have you felt it?
Well, we get CAL FIRE is running this on some of the fires. U.S. Forest Service. We are getting all the resources that we have. What I do know is when they declare an emergency, that gives us funding and money to keep going, and that is hugely important. But right here on the fire line, it takes a lot to trickle down to us so we feel it on one fire.
Christopher Thomas, I'll let you get back to the more important things there in Southern California, but I really appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us as our coverage continues here on NewsNation. Appreciate it. Best of luck.
Thank you very much.
You got it. All right, we continue our coverage here. A live look, Los Angeles County, as the smoke continues there in Southern California. Thousands of Los Angeles homeowners. By the way, now just imagine this. Your life has been flipped upside down. Your home burns. And now many of these folks are saying, what comes next? As there is a big insurance problem in that state. That's on the other side of the break as our coverage continues here on NewsNation. Coverage continues. Want to take you out live now. Pasadena, California, as officials there are giving an update on the situation with the Eaton fire, 0% contained.
This morning, and the level of devastation is staggering. We're extremely thankful for all of our partner agencies here, local, state, and federal. We could not get a handle on this fire without them. And for my residents, we're committed to get back to full restoration as long as that takes, and you'll have the continued support of everybody here in order to do that. Thank you.
And then Sierra Madre Fire Chief Brent Bartlett.
Good afternoon, Brent Bartlett with the City of Sierra Madre Fire Chief. Again, as my peers have already mentioned, thank you goes out to our partners in the efforts to managing and getting this under control. As far as for my community as well, future information can be found on the city's website, Sierra Madre. CityofSierraMadre.com, and our next move is going to be looking at recovery and repopulation after we are getting a better assessment of the damage within our area. So, again, thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to introduce Congresswoman Judy Chu for our next speaker.
Official after official talking about the devastation there in their community. This is in the Pasadena area, the Altadena area, one of the many fires there burning in Southern California. Our Nancy Liu is a little west of them in the Pacific Palisades, as she has been for much of the last several days. Joins us live once again. Nancy?
And Blake, it's the golden hour here in Southern California, and what a sad one it is here in the Pacific Palisades area, where there's still zero containment of the fire here, and officially it's at 17,000 something acres. We haven't had an update in over a day. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any containment by the end of today. But residents are coming back, trying to come back, because officially, Blake, this area is still closed off, but people are on scooters and bikes and even walking in, despite officials telling them not to. But residents who are able to make it in, they're coming back to basically nothing. All that will welcome this homeowner is their front entrance, basically. And beyond this front entrance is just a vast wasteland. I'm surrounded by blocks and blocks of homes that are just flattened. Nothing is left, and it's quite sad. People coming in, that sense of dread, because they don't know if when they get up here, might their house be standing? Might it not? A lot of people are finding nothing. Take a listen to just a few of those residents.
Everything's gone, we're just kind of confirming what we'd seen pictures, and, you can't really emotionally accept it until you see it for yourself.
Stuff is stuff, and we're so happy that we're all safe, and we saved our cat that we love, and, part of our family. And, and there's stores out there that sell more stuff, so that's all going to be okay.
And Blake, what we're hearing from a lot of people is it's just stuff, and they're just thankful to be alive. And you know what we're seeing more around here, Blake, is private security, and also an increased police presence, because you've heard about the looting. But we've seen a couple private security cars sitting outside homes.
Nancy Liu, live for us in Pacific Palisades. Once again, Nancy, thank you. So far, the Palisades fire burned more than 17,000 acres. To put that in perspective here for a moment, that is larger than Manhattan, which is more than 14,000 acres. You can see in that image there, kind of if you were to overlay Manhattan in the region where that Palisades fire is. Now, the Palisades fire region is bigger than Manhattan, with homes decimated. Some of the next phone calls go to the insurance companies, and there is a massive problem in the Golden State. 7 of the largest property insurance companies have recently stopped accepting new home insurance applications, no longer accepting residential homes, insuring residential homes in the state. The only option left for some homeowners is the California Fair Plan, run by the state. Lawmakers have been raising concerns about how the program was close to insolvent, even before a crisis ever hit. Now, in 2024, the Golden State's total exposure was north of $458 billion. That's tripled since 2020. Pacific Palisades alone, the state's exposure there, more than $3 billion. That's up 117% from 2023, more than 7 times from 2020. Joining me now is Laura Powell. She's a veteran of California state politics. She started the nonpartisan group Californians for Good Governance. Laura, thanks for being with us on our special coverage. I was reading on social media some of your posts last night and into the day. How big of a problem is this in your home state?
Well, it looks like it's going to be a major crisis, and it's going to affect everyone. Obviously, the people who lost their homes, a lot of them lost their insurance last year. It was reported State Farm, the biggest insurer in the state, dropped 1,600 people just in Pacific Palisades because they did not feel they could cover the risk. Now that was about 70% of their customers in Pacific Palisades.
So what happens here? They seem
to know that this was, something that might happen, and that they couldn't increase rates enough to cover their risk.
Yeah, so what happens here? Because you've got insurers, private companies, basically saying California won't allow us to bump up the rates to what we need to be to protect ourselves for the awful like this, but then that puts it all in the state's lap, and now they've got exposure to this, and that eventually will end up trickling down to current homeowners.
Exactly. The backup plan is the FAIR plan, and that plan does not have enough money to cover all these losses. So what ends up happening is that it's not actually state funded, but the insurance companies then are going to pass along the costs to the other insured homeowners. So everybody across the state is going to end up having to pay for this in increased premiums. So, the cost of living in California is already so high, and how this is going to affect people, and we have to see how these numbers shake out. But the FAIR plan said the most recent number I saw was $300 million approximately they had in reserve, and this is going to be billions of dollars that the rest of us are going to have to pay. And this has been known that this is a problem. It was reported all last year, and very little's been done. There were a few press releases from the insurance commissioner with some plan, but nobody's really tackled the bigger problem.
Laura Powell, I got to leave it there as as our coverage continues here, as we've dipped in and out of some breaking news here. Thanks for being with us on NewsNation. Appreciate the time. Obviously, for these folks, they are first and foremost thinking about their lives, their family, their friends, many of them who have their homes destroyed and burned down, thinking about what comes next. Where do their kids go to school? Where do they stay? How do they pick up their lives? What's the next chapter in their life? But at some point here soon, they're going to have to confront the reality that state has a massive insurance problem, now exacerbated in an unspeakable tragedy. Our coverage continues here on NewsNation. Other side of the break, two lawmakers from both sides of the aisle. President Biden with a plea today to Congress. It's time to step up, pass more funding. Will that happen? As our coverage continues.
We're the lucky ones. Our neighbors have been devastated, and we're so sad.
There are so many scenes, so many stories like that playing out in Southern California this evening at this hour. Fire still raging. Several thousand structures destroyed, according to officials there on the ground. Now questions starting to mount about why the heroic and brave fire crews fighting a fight that they tell NewsNation they simply could not win.
What we're trying to do is utilize our tools, taking water from pools, using dirt, whatever, our boots, just doing as much as we can. We did try our best, but we got our butts kicked.
Two members of California's congressional delegation join us here, the Republican Congressman Doug LaMalfa, but first to the Democratic Congressman Mark Takano, who is from Southern California. Congressman, thanks for being back with us once again. Nice to speak with you, sir. Unfortunately, under these circumstances, the delegation always, or generally speaking, gets information about what's happening there on the ground. I wonder if you've been briefed, sir, or at least the very latest as you know it.
Well, it's been a very full day here in Washington with the memorial ceremonies for former President Carter, late President Carter, and we really haven't had a chance to meet as a delegation. I've been catching briefings, but my general sentiment is with all the people who are suffering tremendous devastation. And I know my colleague, Ms. LaMalfa, is no stranger to this kind of devastation, the acts of God and nature. And so my heart goes out to all the people who are suffering. Sure.
We heard from President Biden about 2 hours ago, Congressman, and he made, he's only in office here for another 11 days, 10 plus days, but he made this plea to the United States Congress. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
I'm going to make an appeal right now to the United States Congress. They're going to have to step up when we ask for more help to get these people the kind of shelter they need, to get the kind of help they need, because it really does matter.
More help. It's the suggestion of an assistance package or an aid package at this point in time. Do you believe that's coming in the near days?
Well, it should come, and whether or not it will depend on whether or not all my colleagues can rise above politics. And, the latest continuing resolution that we passed to fund the government in December was attached, tens of billions of dollars for North Carolinians and Floridians who suffered at the hand of terrible hurricanes. The Democrats and Republicans, but the Democrats in California, the Republicans in California, we all voted for that package. And that's what the nation is for. That's what the United States federal government is for, is when we have, regions of our country that suffer these terrible natural disasters or terrible occurrences. It's up to the nation to step up and help. That's exactly what Californians did, the California delegation did, and I certainly hope that we'll be repaid in kind. It's a time to rise above politics. And I certainly hope the Congress will rise above politics.
Congressman Mark Takano represents an area between Los Angeles and Palm Springs, essentially, as he has his eyes and certainly his heart there on his home state. Thank you for being with us tonight as our coverage continues here on NewsNation. I want to get to your colleague on the other side of the aisle, Doug LaMalfa, who represents the one of the most northern districts in the state, joins us live. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
From President Biden today, just 2 hours ago, basically, we're going to need Congress's help here to step in. Do you think that's going to happen? If so, what's your sense of when that could happen?
Congress and the White House, we've worked together depending on the administration. It doesn't matter which administration. We've worked together for all the years I've been here on disasters. One of the first things that was in my lap as a new member in 2013 was Hurricane Sandy and the packages there. So I don't think Congress really has a record of not helping or the White House not helping. It's just a matter of how quickly, we have a lot going on right now.
That did get a little political, though, Sandy, and I wonder if you have any fears or concerns that maybe it could hear.
Well, the political seems to be pushed by things going on in the media or whatever. When you get right down to it, the conversations on the floor there's always disagreements over certain pieces. On Sandy, I think it had three big pieces. We supported pretty easily two of them. So it's an issue where, if we don't allow the rhetoric to overcome, there is the spirit of trying to get these things done. And as we just did recently on the hurricanes, the effect down in Florida and Georgia and the Carolinas. So we'll get there. I'm confident of that. Again, we've had a lot going on lately with this week. We had President Carter's services here that kind of, threw our week off a little bit here, but it's proper to honor the president. And then we'll have the inauguration coming up. So this month so far has been a little tougher to get a lot of real work done, so we had to get everybody sworn in and go up to speed. But that said, it's very important that we get on this and not have everybody feel left behind. But they've been very helpful in my district when we had the fire in Paradise, California, known as the Camp Fire, where 85 people lost their lives, the town 90% devastated. And FEMA and others, they came through and were helpful. So
you went through and experienced that devastation.
Yes, sir.
That was in, as I mentioned, the northern part of your state. This is in Southern California. And as we watch helicopters in Los Angeles County fly in and try to help with dropping any form of fire retardant or dropping water, as you can see there as we look live here on NewsNation, or for those listening to us on Sirius XM.
Well, the readiness factor is that this is the off season for most of the West. In Southern California, it never ends. The Santa Ana winds can hit this time of year. It's dry all the time. So we have to have a year-round attitude on this, especially helping areas like that can be affected by year-round fire. And so when we send the aircraft home for the year because the fire's out in the snowy areas, this is what can happen here. And also our other forms of readiness with the equipment, they're running out of water there. What reason? Is it because the pond's not full or the equipment's not big enough to handle a high load? These are questions that will have to be answered here, but our readiness hasn't been what it should be.
What are the potential long-term implications here for your state? As I mentioned, you live in the north. This is in the south. It's a massive state, 41 million people.
It affects us all statewide here. One of the things I'm mostly concerned about right now is how are we going to insure homes and have home insurance in the state after this? Because I saw a piece a little while ago that showed that the amount of coverage is going to be needed for Palisades is going to be extremely expensive. Yep. and that insurance companies, as you know, are pulling out of the state because they can't afford at the rates. They have to be able to make a living, and they have to be in the plus, and they have to have a rate that's commensurate with the amount of risk they have. Now, let's take Paradise. They should be able to come back and write insurance in Paradise because the fire's already happened. Hundreds of thousands of trees are gone, and the new homes are being rebuilt are fire resistant. And so we're going to have to do some very different thinking on getting insurance to be able to be here. They're going to have to adjust their rates to what is commensurate with the level of risk in an area. And we have to do things to make an area less risk, like manage our forests and manage our lands so there's not so much brush. Let the cattle graze. Bring the goats in and do all the things that is normal and sensible. The Forest Service has claimed they've had last year more money than they've ever had, yet they're still fighting us on the ability to do the work that is needed in the forest and the federal lands.
Doug LaMalfa, thank you for being with us here on News Nation. Appreciate you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time. Talk to you again soon. Still to come here on News Nation and on the Hill, the controversy surrounding the California Governor Gavin Newsom, the mayor there, Karen Bass, how they're responding to the fires. The full panel after the break, including the scene we witnessed today here in our nation's capital.
News Nation, with affiliate KTLA, was the first cable news network on the scene.
It's one of the only things that are left standing.
Yeah, it tells you about America. The flag is not going to go away. We're going to unite and help each other.
News Nation is there when you need to know.
It was so fast. It came over the hillside. Embers started landing and catching things on fire, and that's when my son yelled, "Dad, we got to get out of here."
That's just one of the thousands, many, many thousands of Californians who've had their lives turned upside down this week by the devastating fires in Los Angeles. Live look, LA County now, where the Los Angeles Times is reporting that there's actually a new fire in Woodland Hills. So if you were to go basically from Pacific Palisades, Santa Monica, Malibu area, and you drive through the mountains there north and you get out on the other side into Calabasas, that's where Woodland Hills is. That would be on the other side of the mountain. And the Los Angeles Times is reporting 50 acres of brush fire there as this continues to move. The Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass has been under scrutiny for her response to the disaster and is now facing questions about how she cut the fire department budget last year.
I think it's most important to understand that we were in tough budgetary times. Everybody knew that, but that the impact of our budget really did not impact what we've been going through over the last few days.
So that's part of her defense. The governor, Gavin Newsom, has been at the focus of criticism as well. Last night, putting the onus on locals when asked why the fire hydrants in Pacific Palisades ran out of water.
Local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires.
As our coverage continues here, full panel with me now, Mick Mulvaney, former chief of staff in the Trump administration, News Nation contributor. Linda Tran is the former senior advisor to the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Dan Cannonen, former Battleground States director for President Biden and Vice President Harris. And Samantha Dravis, former Trump administration official. Hello, thank you all for being here as our coverage continues, as we continue to watch just the terrible tragedy unfold in Southern California. The reality is right now, the focus, Linda, is on getting this thing contained, getting it stopped, making sure people evacuate, doing whatever they need. But there are also real questions about how the governor and the local officials there are handling all this.
Yeah, look, we've heard the mayor's response in that they were handling budget cuts the way they thought was appropriate at the time, and that I believe their analysis was that some of the cuts themselves really were filled by not filling additional roles. I think there's going to be plenty of time and plenty to look at in terms of what actions we're taking heading into this, but really, you hit the nail on the head, Blake. We just got to focus on how they're deploying resources at this moment to help save people's lives.
Quote, "Don't tell me what you value, show me your budget, and I'll tell you what you value." That is Joe Biden. And there's lots of questions about how LA handled their budget there. But I'm even looking at, Dan, the president saying today, when they had to cut power, rightfully so, that's why Cal Water couldn't pump water. And then Gavin Newsom says it's on the locals. And the mayor basically says the budget's irrelevant. And it just doesn't sit well right now.
It doesn't, and leadership requires showing up and being there and taking responsibility and taking action to save people's lives, as Linda said. But I think people should look at this in two frames. There's what's happening right now with 100-mile-an-hour winds and the tinderbox that's become this part of Los Angeles County and the response required to meet that moment. But then there's the long-term, medium-term, and short-term responses and preparation for future mitigation efforts. I will give Republicans in Congress that voted with the president, the bipartisan infrastructure law had $1.5 billion there for mitigation for wildfires. This is a problem of zoning. It's a problem of forest management. It's a problem of some of the water systems, as the governor alluded to. What I understand, though, is that those water reservoirs in Los Angeles County were at the highest levels. They were more than average for this time of year. That was not the issue.
But they also fought bringing water down from the north to the south. I mean, there's lots of...
Sure, and that's an issue you can debate about in the smelt. I'm not going to go jump on the side of the smelt in this case. Right. But in terms of what mattered in the last 7 days, that wasn't the problem. The problem was the system was overwhelmed by 100-mile-an-hour winds and incredible demand.
Samantha, Mike Johnson called this feckless leadership. He pointed to Gavin Newsom's water policy. They didn't manage the forests and the cuts at the fire department.
Yeah, it's a total failure of leadership and bad policy that's been going on for decades. Dan, you mentioned the Santa Ana winds, which are really nothing new to this area. I read before the break the National Weather Service actually issued a warning of these extreme high winds that were about to move in. And on the same day, the California Water Board also issued a warning suggesting the snowpack was exceptionally low, meaning that the water resources were going to be low. This was 2 days before Mayor Bass decided to get on a plane and go to Ghana, leaving the country and fly halfway across the world. So it's an unforgivable, inexcusable failure of leadership. And then to get back, and as she's going out the VIP entrance of the airplane, decides to address the reporter with complete and total silence, as she's asked numerous times, what do you have to say to the citizens of LA as their homes are burning down and people are burning alive?
Mick, you made the point, though, yesterday that a lot of the decisions were made before this.
They were. I mean, you're seeing the result of 20 and 30 and 40 years worth of decision-making. I mentioned last night that I talked to a member who used to be in the state legislature, a Democrat in California. He said, look, there were things we wanted to do 20 years ago that the environmental left wouldn't let us do in California, and you're seeing that now. I'm not sure what Gavin Newsom could do now to look good. I know what Karen Bass could do to look less bad, because she looks terrible in all of this. But if I wanted to defend Newsom, and I can't believe I'm doing this, if you ask the governor, why did the locality run out of water in the fire hydrants, he's not going to know the answer to that question. There's no good answer to that question. Look, the fire's out of control. People are losing their homes. People are dying. There's nothing a politician is going to be able to say right now that makes them look good. I'm with Linda on this. Let's get through it, but we always say that. Let's get through it, and then we'll go back and we get through it, and we don't look back afterwards and change our policies. And that's what needs to happen here.
All right. So speaking of politicians, the big story here in Washington today, the state funeral for Jimmy Carter, the 39th president of the United States, who passed away at the age of 100. And this was the rare time where you get all the living presidents together at once. Show the video real quick. So this was obviously President Biden, George Bush, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, President-elect Trump, all sitting there. It was a little icy there, Samantha.
Well, it wasn't icy between President Obama and President Trump. And,
what do you think that was all about?
I'm not sure, but I will say President Obama has spent the last year calling Trump a dictator, saying he's a threat to democracy, perpetuating rhetoric that almost got Trump killed. And now he's sitting there sharing a laugh and a joke with a person he said was Hitler. So
I'm going to give what do you think?
I mean, how low is our bar when we are blown away by some basic civility at the funeral of a man who deserved having all of these people there? You know, irony of ironies. This is where we've landed.
Okay, wait a second. I didn't know that's where you were going to go. Where was the same basic civility during the campaign? You can't call somebody Hitler and mean it and then sit and joke with him. Either he didn't think he was Hitler or he's okay joking with Hitler. And I think what this sort of shows is that it was exaggeration and hyperbole. And believe me, we have that in campaigns. We all know that. We do this for a living. We campaign for a living, right? There is hyperbole and there's exaggeration, but sometimes you cross the line and you can't go back. And a lot of the Democrats crossed the line this time, and it's really hard to go back.
By the way, live picture, Plains, Georgia, as Jimmy Carter's casket is back in his hometown. The internment is taking place later this evening. Dan, as we stay on these live pictures briefly here, for a moment. It was bizarre watching the way that the five of them interacted today.
Well, it was odd to see that, I guess, and I think to Mick's point and to Linda's point and Sam as well, this is a weird situation for some of these guys. But at the end of the day, you can believe, I think, that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, to our institutions, to the welfare of Americans. You can believe that. And also in a funeral of a president, who, by the way, that president would be building homes in Los Angeles County if he could still. You can choose in that moment. Yes, you can choose in that moment to be civil and engage in a way that's not going to distract from this important moment.
By the way, he absolutely would be building homes to the poor. This is not about Jimmy Carter. The man is got great things to say about him after he was president. But it's not just now. Look, the left dealt with this same issue when Joe Biden invited Donald Trump into the White House, and they had a chummy sort of time. You can't do that, right? You can't call somebody Hitler and then invite him over to your house for dinner.
Our coverage continues here on NewsNation Plains, Georgia. Jimmy Carter arriving back home in his hometown. And we continue to keep our eyes on Southern California as now another fire has broke out in Woodland Hills, we are told. Our coverage continues on the other side of the break.
Phone service, by the way. 0 cell phone service. The only way we're able to talk to you right now is because we have a Starlink.
Our Brian Enton, as he's been reporting there in Southern California, basically saying, you know what, the only way you can get online, Leland Vittert, host of On Balance, I believe that was on your show last night, is with Starlink, which was how he got on our show tonight. It's a new development when you have these natural disasters and internet is out, power's out. Fire up the Starlink.
Well, and it's amazing, right? Because it used to be, and you and I did this in local news,